Hold on. We got to go on the YouTube live. We're through here. City Council for the Monday, March the 20th, 2023. At this time, I'll take a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, here today we have the Boy Scouts from Troop 120 from the Grace Lutheran, who just kind of restarted their program. Gentlemen, if you want to come up here in front and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag is over here behind us. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Mr. Clerk, I have a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Sira.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Corbin.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mr. Lippian.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
All present.
Are there any public hearings?
There are none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah,
Second.
second by Ms.
Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, City Council members. Just a couple updates, a couple congratulations I want to give. First, congratulations to the Roll Arena, who this weekend celebrated their 75th anniversary. Also, congratulations to Rita's Ice Cream. And if we get out of here in time, people can still go get a free ice today for kickoff to spring. Thank you to those who participated in the State of the City address, either the one at the college or the one we hosted last week. The one from the college, as well as some videos available on YouTube. A couple things. This week I'll be in Columbus speaking against gun violence with Moms Demand Action on Wednesday. So, you know, if anyone's interested in getting involved in that cause, just know that there's folks, the Moms Demand Action is a great organization to be a part of. This week is also National Surveyors Week, so I actually have a proclamation here. It was recommended to us by Mr. Fredrickson. And if you don't know surveyors, I'll just read a little bit of the proclamation. So surveying is the art and science of accurately determining the position of the points and distances between them. It's vitally important to the development of our city and our country. Surveying is important in building, transportation, communications, mapping, and in determining property boundaries. And so I know our city, every time there's a development project, you got surveyors out there working on it. So I wanted to give them a shout out. And then lastly, this week, LCC is hosting a semiconductor conference over the next 2 days where there'll be representatives from Intel and other big semiconductor companies coming right here to the city of Elyria. I'll be there, hopefully try to recruit some of those folks to come to Elyria. And if you're curious about the semiconductor space, we've had some interviews with some of the experts from the industry that can be found on YouTube if you search Elyria Chip Talk. And that's my report, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Safety Service Director, Mr. Lundy.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, living in Northeast Ohio, the weather is always a challenge because it's constantly changing. We had some intermittent bursts of snow, but nothing too severe in recent weeks. The challenge has been that while we haven't had much snow, of course, we've had our share of rain, and as a result, we've had to wait for actual dry conditions so we can get out and address the potholes that are popping up around town. The crews are out with dry weather, and we'll be out over the next couple days before the rain reappears. Also, I want to thank our building department and community development for helping us with an important deadline for Elyria schools. There was some last-minute paperwork that we had to address so that the new scoreboards could actually go up at the baseball fields, and so that they would be in place for the season opener on March 27th. Special thanks to voting official Daryl Farkas and Community Development Director Ashley Scott, making it possible for the fans of the Pioneers to say, play ball. So, also had the opportunity to join a meeting with the mayor as we met with the director of NOACA to go over federal funding programming and future grant opportunities to address congestion mitigation. And finally, I guess I'd want to urge that we all keep a watchful eye on House Bill 1 in Columbus, now before the legislature. That legislation will slash an estimated $1.2 billion, that's with a B, from local governments. Of course, they'll be impacting our city, our library system, our school system. I know Ted and I were talking about it today. Council should consider a conversation with Representative Manning and Senator Manning in hopes of warding off the loss of future dollars to our community. And that completes my report to Council.
Any questions for Mr. Lundy? Mr. Lundy? Mr. Plesky, Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report at this time.
Okay. Law Director Deary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Okay. Elyria Police Department, Chief Pelko.
Good evening. I just wanted to report I have some retirements coming up on March 23rd. Lieutenant Jason Cunningham, who is our night shift OIS officer in charge, he'll be retiring from the police department with 25 years on, so I'd like to wish him the best of luck. And then Lieutenant Mac Eichenlob, who runs our day shift, will be retiring March 31st. So we wish them both the best of luck in their future careers. And with that said, we will be having promotions April 3rd. Here in City Council Chambers at 3 o'clock. Sergeant Poole and Sergeant Wade will get promoted to lieutenant, and Patrol Officer James Wise and Adam Garvin will get promoted to sergeant. So congratulations to them, and again, to Lieutenant Eichenlob and Lieutenant Cunningham, we wish the best of luck.
Excuse me. Any questions for Chief Pelko? Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. President. Any update on the Harvard incident?
No, we're still looking into it, still investigating it, still waiting for some leads or tips to come in for us.
Mr. Callahan?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to the Chief. With the new group that came on board a few weeks ago, and then with the retirements, when there is the retirements, what will that number be for your department?
We'll be at 86 officers on March 31st. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Pelko? Thank you, Chief. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti.
Good evening. I just wanted to update you. We did have another unfortunate fatal fire last week in the southeast section off Kansas. A gentleman was doing some work, and we're still investigating it, but doesn't seem to be anything out of the, any kind of foul play or anything like that, but I just wanted to update you. It's our 5th fatal fire in about a year and a half. So it's unfortunate that they've hit like this. doing everything we can, but there's only so much. We're still advocating smoke detectors. This one was just a tragic accident. So other than that, if you don't have any questions, that's all I wanted to report on. We just had another unfortunate fatal.
Any questions, Mr. Oswald?
Just a comment, put batteries in your smoke detectors.
Yeah, we just felt sprung forward, so we always try to encourage that. But yeah, anything that we can do.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Assistant Safety Service Director, Ms. Calvert.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. President, I wanted to remind everybody that we are going through our comprehensive land use plan. So we are at the point now where the consultants have gathered a lot of current conditions data. So if you're a data nerd, there's going to be lots of information coming forth about the number of residents, housing, workers, data for Parks and Rec, just a lot of consolidation of data to give us an overview of the city. But I also wanted to remind you to please take the survey if you have not. So there is a web page active. It is ourelyria.com. You can go online and take the survey. That survey is not only for residents, it's for those that live and work, visit and work in the city as well. We want to get as much input and feedback as we can about the city so that we can really have a well-vetted, comprehensive view towards the vision that this community develops for its future. So that survey can go out to anyone. Please share it with your constituents. And please publish it in your articles that it is available at ourelyria.com. And that is all I have, so unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Ms. Calvert? Thank you, Ms. Calvert. Assistant Safety Service Director, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. President. Just a brief update. Met with the Parks Board at their monthly meeting, and we were just going over the final edits to the updates to the master plan. And I would just encourage you all, if you haven't had the opportunity to preview that, please do so. Director Reardon and I have been working closely with the Parks Board to review this document, and you can email her any suggestions that you might have. Anything that you see that you think should be highlighted or altered. Again, we've presented this to the Park Board, and we're just about finalized, so your input would be most appreciated, and then we will be ready to come before you at next month for final draft for approval.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Williams?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Superintendent Wastewater, Mr. Corzan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to notify council and the public that the wastewater department has completed the 2022 sanitary sewer overflow report. It has been submitted to Ohio EPA, and it is posted on the wastewater page of the city's website if anyone wants to take a look at it. And other than that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Corzan? Okay, thank you, Mr. Corzan. Does someone? Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr.
Sorry,
President.
Mr. Corzan.
Yeah. So I always forget what the projects are named, but we got the project going down off Abbey Road, and then I'm even trying to think of the name of the street down by Briar Lake, and then at the end down there, that project was slated to be starting approved, and then we had another one, a pump station or something on Abbey Road near across the street. How are those progressing? Do they have start dates? What's going on with those?
Well, the East Side Release Sewer is progressing down, Poplar also down. They were working on Gulf Road, proceeding as they knew they would. We have the construction going on East Bridge Street now for the big structure that's going to go in there. The Windward Siphon project is still in progress. We're still working on the design, trying to figure out what we're going to end up doing with that. We've had surveyors out there, and DLZ has been out there looking at everything. And well, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. President. So I don't know, it was, I thought, directly across from like Windward on the other side of Abbey, that weren't we putting in some kind of...
Yes, that's still in the works. We're trying to figure out, once we get the Windward Siphon project designed and we get some ideas as to what additional flow that is going to take, because right now we have a single barrel siphon on Windward, and that's going to be a double barrel siphon according to the 10 state standards now. One barrel will be for dry weather flow. There will be a larger barrel for the wet weather flow. So once we get an idea as to how much additional flow that will be able to take to the plant, then we can take a look at what we need to do with the Abbey Road lift station on Abbey Road North, because the idea was the possibility of building a relief sewer from that station going south to Abbey and Whitman, where the big chamber is there. But we won't know how to design that until we see how much additional flow we can get down the new siphon.
And through you, Mr. President, again, please. And so we have money allocated for that, grant money, correct? It wasn't something approved for funding?
With all these projects, we're always looking for grant funding. I know we got $1.8 million this year in principal forgiveness loans, which is great. As the first grant money we've gotten since like 1985. So one of the clean water state revolving fund loans, 1.8 of that is still a loan, but it's principal forgiveness, so we won't have to pay that back. But everything else that we've borrowed to date will pay back over a 30-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corzine. Chief Building Official, Mr. Farkas. Any questions for Mr. Farkas? Director of Community Development, Ms. Scott. Okay, very good. Ms. Scott, are we going to have the presentation now for what we spoke about in regards to the mapping, or is that happening tonight, or is that strategic planning? Okay, I stand corrected on that. I think that's everybody. Okay. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, community development. Item number 2, community development. Item number 3, community development finance. Item number 4, finance. Item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance and utilities. Item number 7, finance and utilities. Item number 8, finance and utilities. Item number 9, finance and utilities. Item number 10, finance and utilities. Item number 11, utilities. Item number 12, utilities. Item 13, received and placed on file in the clerk's office. Before we go to petitions and remonstrances from the lobby, I would ask the president and the new executive director for Elyria Community Partnership to come up. Again, reintroduce yourself for everybody, and let's give an update on the Elyria Community Partnership.
Absolutely. Good evening. You've met me before. I'm Mike Griffin. I live over on Gulf Road. I'm the president of the Elyria Community Partnership Board. We've been very busy since last time we came and talked with you. But the thing that has been our biggest success since we've last met with you is we've hired a new executive director. So Monet Roberts is our new executive director. Monet comes to us from a national organization that works with cities across the country called Better City. She has a bachelor's degree in promotional communications and a master's degree in public administration. She started, I think it was Valentine's Day, right around, and has really hit the ground running. So she has met with more people than I think I've ever met in the city of Elyria. She really has just gotten out there and talked to everybody, and she's going to give you a little bit of an update as to what we've been doing, what we did last year, and what we're working on currently. Whoa, that's a little strobe light there. But again, we're really very excited to have her on board. She's been really leading a lot of our activities since then. Certainly has freed up a little bit of my time, and just a great partner to have with us. So I will hand it off to Monet, and we'll sort of tag team as needed.
Hello. Let me see. I think I need to just bring it down. There we go. Well, thank you all for having me today. I hope you all are having a good evening. Just hats off to your service that you all are doing in this community. I think we all have a shared vision, and that is to improve the quality of life for our residents in Elyria. I am just super, super excited about the charge that Elyria Community Partnership has. We have, since last year, we've been able to just contact over 100 business owners and property owners, and also meeting with residents just throughout our events, through the social media engagement. We've met with over 5,000 residents. This is an extremely exciting time. Just to give you an update on where we are currently, we had an excellent consultant that has worked with us. Her name was Andrea Repko, and she has been able to charge some of these amazing events. She is not extending her contract after March for personal reasons, but we just wanted to assure that we let the community know that she's been a great asset to this community and to this partnership. With that being said, we're hiring just to fill in those shoes. It's going to be tough to fill, but we have an amazing board, and we have, I like to call the residents that have participated in some of our engagement, I extend them as my staff. So I think we have an amazing group of volunteers. Just to give you an update, we have some events up there, which is our calendar year end. I have had an opportunity to speak with some amazing property owners downtown Elyria. We're building that property database, and also just getting a better understanding on what the conditions are for our business owners. We have great traction and great engagement. Business owners are excited, and we're hoping that we can partner with the city and partner with our residents to make sure that we can improve that quality of life and improve the conditions for our properties and our business owners downtown. We've also had some engagement with Land Studios. We've had over 60 conversations with focus groups, and we're in the process of those final recommendations. They're inputting some potential funding sources, and some of those projects will include the Historical Looking Glass project that I think the community is excited about, I'm excited about, and we'll be able to give more information in regard to that soon. And just being able to connect with you all. Like I said, I top my hats off to you all. I think we have a great mission ahead of us, and I'm really, really excited to be in this position. Did you have further? Questions.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for Ms. Roberts. She's just got an energy and a passion for this job, and we're excited to work for her. And she's already been hitting the ground running, obviously, as she said, and making these downtown connections to kind of really set the standard of what we're trying to do to, be a part of making this movement and changing of this. So congratulations on your appointment. We look forward to continue working with you. With that being said, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Roberts? Mr. Lippiam?
Through you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. For the public, could you talk a little bit more about this Historical Looking Glass project?
Yes. So the Historical Looking Glass project, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, there are 5 of these historical markers that you would say that we're going to be able to place downtown. We have to go through the appropriate avenues with the Design Review Committee and possibly the Planning Commission, but we're in the process of getting all of those details situated. We don't have final on when those will be able to be implemented just yet because we are going through the appropriate actions. But these, essentially what you can do is look into these glasses and see what used to be. So the old dome that used to be on top of the courthouse, you'll be able to see that. And it's just a really cool idea to go back to history almost and cherish the history that we have downtown.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Oswald?
I guess just more comment. When this started off, it was kind of rocky. We didn't get a lot of information, and so it was kind of hard to believe that something was going to really happen. And I can say thank you very much because, yes, you guys have done a lot of work. Good job. Keep it going. I appreciate it. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. Mr. Roberts, so is this looking glass just for the downtown area?
Yes, initially. Initially, it would be downtown focused.
And the reason I say that, because we have a very historical water tower that sits over on 15th Street, which is now Muncie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, one day, could that be part of your historical looking glass?
We will take note. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else have any questions? Yep. Again, you know, the partnership was set up at a lead that we were trying to make a difference in the downtown and ultimately for our city, and having those communications and opening up with the strength of people like Mike Griffin and what he brings to the table, and a lot of the board members into there. So we're very fortunate to have them on there. And so it is a challenge. You know, we face challenges every day, but we have a good direction and a good lead, and we're just going to continue marching forward, and good things are going to come from this. So really out here, get involved. Those who are in the audience and who are watching on YouTube, get involved with the downtown. Contact the Elyria Community Partnership, and, you know, we can see what any helps and volunteers that you can do to kind of make a change here. Okay? Is there any other questions? All right. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Okay, moving on. Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have several. Dawn Guanajuato, 311 Gulf Road, no subject.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Dawn Guanajuato, 311 Gulf Road. This was actually for a couple meetings ago, but I was sick last time, so I couldn't make it to speak. I kind of want to talk about the East Palestine thing that went on and the railroad and the water situation, and kind of to go off of what you said about how you think it's a once in a generation or a once in a lifetime type thing that could happen. So hopefully we're okay. But I don't really think that way, and I still don't think that way. I don't think the people there are safe. I don't think the people feel safe in their own town. If you watch their city council meetings, if you watch any of the video, what's going on, all they do is scrape a stick across the creek bed and just chemical rainbow comes to the surface, or throw a rock and chemical rainbow comes to the surface. I know that we did do some testing. I read in the paper that you guys did some testing, which I appreciate, but I also don't necessarily think you're testing for the right things. Vinyl chloride becomes different things when you burn it, or when it goes into water, or when it goes to these things, and I think we should be testing for those things as well, just to make sure our water here is safe. Dioxins, phosgene, HCl, just to name a few. Because I don't think they care. I don't think railroad companies care. I don't think the EPA cares. I think they'll, give us a $200,000 fine for the quarry over there that happened back in the 70s, but then they'll just blow up something in East Palestine and call it a controlled burn. And then 2 days later, as fast as they can lay the tracks, tell the people that it's safe for them to come back home, and it's really not. They just want to go back to business as usual and bury right over it, which they're going to have to take all that back up because they just went right over chemicals, which are still getting into their water source and possibly other water sources downstream. We don't really know, because I don't really trust the people that are doing the testing either. The company, when Norfolk Southern's paying for that company, you know, I don't really trust the results that are coming from people that are paying them. I think Norfolk Southern is criminals and led by criminals. So I just want us to keep that in mind, and if anything like that ever happens to us, that we be a little bit more ready for our residents to get them out of town or to do what we have to do, because nobody cares about those people. Our own residents are helping those people more than, you know, the government or our own Mr. DeWine, Governor DeWine, or anybody. I also wanted to talk about a place called Times Beach, Missouri, because there was something that happened there in the 70s where they used to spray down dirt roads to keep the dirt from being, you know, everywhere, especially in the summertime when it was blowing and a pain in the butt. And they sprayed their roads sometimes with like oil. And what was in this oil, unbeknownst to the man who was spreading it to keep the dirt out, was dioxins, which they were talking about dioxins being in the water in East Palestine. That was in the 70s, and it wasn't until the 80s that they actually found out that this stuff was in the water. So those people lived there for over 10 years before they finally condemned the town and got everybody out. So again, we don't always want to trust what people are telling us, and we always want to do our own due diligence, because I don't trust big companies, and I don't really want people here in Elyria to get sick from different and they've already said that there's carcinogenics in that water. So I just want us to be aware of that stuff and maybe start testing our water for these various things so that we don't have the same issues that they're having down south. I think we're very fortunate to live upstream, but that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't be looking into it.
Okay, I appreciate you coming up over and through there. If you have any information that you can supply with the council clerk's office, we can take that information, and thank you for being part of the awareness. We appreciate it.
Actually, they brought some of that stuff right here to Grafton, Ohio, Ross Industries.
Right.
There was a video that showed the truck, one of the trucks going from there and taking it over there, burning right next door to us.
Yeah.
So do I think Ross Industries can burn this stuff safely? Possibly. But is my trust in them? Not really, because this stuff is bad stuff.
All right, very good. Thank you for coming up.
Jason Pilardi, 312 Harvard Avenue, Eastern Heights, and upcoming levy renewal.
Council President, I wanted to respond to that. I don't know if you want to wait till everybody goes through and then.
Mr. Pilardi, if you could hold off for a second. Mayor Whitfield, did you want to make a comment?
Sorry about that. Well, I just wanted to kind of reassure the person who came up and spoke. You know, when we decided to do this water testing, it wasn't because we were being proactive. It wasn't because we were prompted to do it. We felt similar concerns that you felt, and we also believe in trust but verify. And we recognize that, you know, this is a corporation, and so we wanted to make sure we were doing our due diligence and our trust. We have amazing water team here at the City of Elyria, including Superintendent Corzine, who's like the dean. And so any questions you have about what we tested for, that is the man you want to talk to. And they take this water quality in the City of Elyria very seriously and very thoroughly. So just want to make sure you got that connection.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lippian.
Through me, Mr. President, thank you. Thanks, Dawn, for what you said. I know you and I are working on trying to get some aid over there with bottles of water, and not to preempt Mr. Pilardi, but because I know he's going to cover this as well. But it's important for people to remember to keep a stock of bottled water handy in your house in case of a natural disaster or a major event. I know people don't like bottled water sometimes, but it comes in handy if there's a water main break, like happened in Oberlin around 2008. They were able to get White House water from Elyria to Oberlin, and it was actually that issue that convinced the campus not to ban bottled water. It does come in handy, and it's good to have a stock for emergency purposes like what happened at East Palestine. And I'll speak more about what Dawn and I are thinking of doing with bottled water during miscellaneous business.
Thank you, Ms. Lippian. Mr. Pilardi. Sorry for the inconvenience, and thank you for the understanding. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jason Pilardi, 312 Harvard Avenue. I'm actually going to pick up kind of where she left off and where Mr. Lippian left off there. And this goes back to, and I'm a huge supporter of yours, Chief. I truly am. And about a month ago, Council had asked you about what the city's preparations were, if there what kind of a plan was in place if we had a similar hazardous spill here in the city. And your response that day was, we would do the best that we can. And I think you missed a big moment there. And this isn't to, I'm not knocking you in any way. I'm more adding to that of what maybe what we should say to our citizens with that question, because it's a legit question. We were talking about what plans are in place for the hazardous materials if there was an accident here. But maybe what could citizens do to prepare for those emergencies, right? Because at the end of the day, is the government really going to be able to get all of your needs taken care of? You have no water, you have no food, you have nowhere to go. Is city council going to do that for you? Is the fire chief going to do that for you, or the police chief? No, right? So if it makes it more important than ever to have proper food storage at home, bottled water on hand. I mean, they still don't have drinkable water down in East Palestine. Did everyone realize that? They still don't have drinkable water for the most part. Imagine you at your home a month later. Would you have enough water stored a month later? No, probably not. Basic medical supplies, medications, pre-planned locations to go to in case something happens. Do you have a family member outside of town that you've already made plans with that, hey, XYZ happens? They know to expect you and your children. It's things to think about. So I just wanted to comment on that I thought that would have been a great opportunity to say, you know, we do have plans in place here in the city of Elyria, but here's what you can do. I think that's important anyways. Harvard Avenue, we know about the drive-by shootings. There's been a vehicle that has been spotted in the neighborhood a few times, and the police department's been contacted about it. And their response back has been, we'll look into it. At one time, one of those calls to the police department was made minutes after spotting this vehicle. The response from dispatch was, we'll look into it. I think the city needs to do a better job at this. It's time to really look in the mirror and ask yourselves, are we really doing everything we can for our citizens? Are we really making combating a crime a priority in all of our neighborhoods, not just a select few neighborhoods? I understand there's still a manpower issue in the department, and that I feel you. That's hard. It really is. But I do remember a levy many, many, many years ago, and it keeps getting talked about, that promised 100 police officers, and it's no fault of the chiefs, but it still hasn't happened yet. So if I'm stating this correctly, I believe that levy is up for renewal this year. How many more times are we going to have to pass it before we hit 100 police officers, like what was promised many, many, many years ago? Citizens are starting to wonder. I know because I talk to people. Are we getting our money's worth out of that levy right now or not? So I want to leave you with these last couple thoughts. I want the police department to be the police department that we need you to be. I want the fire department to be the fire department that we need you to be. I want our city leadership to be the leadership that we need you to be, because we'll look into it doesn't cut it anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paladie.
Mr. President?
I don't know who's,
Yeah,
Mr.
Matt
Lundy.
Lundy. Yeah, Safety Service Director, I guess I would just add that, you know, when dispatchers get calls, that may be the response that you get just from the standpoint of their job is to dispatch. They're not the decision makers. And I know working closely with the chiefs, we have plenty of conversations about making sure that we're going through all the scenarios and making sure we're providing the best public service and best public safety possible. I just wanted to point that out.
And I'll add to that, and I appreciate your comment on that. Something that I didn't mention, just because we were talking about the East Palestine thing, we have a constant speeding concern in the Eastern Heights neighborhoods, and I think we do in all neighborhoods. People just don't care anymore, plain and simple. About a week ago, there was a vehicle that was driving easily 50, 60 miles an hour down the streets. Called the police department. We'll look into it. A few minutes went by. Car came screaming down the street again. Called the police department again. We'll look into it. Called a third time after the car came down the street. We'll look into it. We watched for 40 minutes. Nobody looked into it. When you're getting information that is essentially real time, you would hope that you at least drive down the streets. It's not asking a lot. Once again, I know we're short on manpower, but I hope folks realize that when we call the police departments because of something, we're watching out the window waiting. Is there going to be a response? And when you get told we'll look into it, and you wait 40 minutes after 3 phone calls for the same car, when's it going to be a priority? When a kid gets hit? When someone's daughter's backing out of the driveway and they get hit by the car? When is it a priority? So, like I said before, we'll look into it. Isn't going to cut it anymore. Thanks.
Melody.
Matt Schwab, 503 West Avenue, Building Department budget.
Please state your name and address for the record, Mr. Schwab.
Matt Schwab, 503 West Avenue. First up, I want to say something before I get on my subject. Yesterday in our historic district, we had a little fire, and I just wanted to say thank you to the chief and his crew for taking care of it, isolating that fire and saving a very old house. Probably a 140-year-old house they saved. What I came up here to talk about was this year's budget that you guys are looking at. Last week, Daryl Farkas talked to you guys about the budget of the building department. I really would like to see a fully funded building department. Our housing, like in my neighborhood, the housing stock is deteriorating. Everything's in disrepair. We have absentee landlords coming in. I know probably every neighborhood out here has that same situation. Trash cans out all week, high grass complaints in the summer. Our downtown is getting dilapidated, litter everywhere. This all lowers our property values. And if we have a housing department that has a manpower, we can go after these people that are in violation. It brings up the property values. It retains the people who are fed up and say, I'm tired of this place, I'm moving to Avon. It brings in people from Avon, brings in people from other cities who want to live here than if you have better housing, which creates a higher tax base, brings in more business, which then will fund all these other departments that are shorthanded and underfunded. And then also, I think Daryl last week mentioned about the municipal court. The citations they're cited, they end up going to court, and a lot of times stuff doesn't happen. It doesn't go any further. And I'm asking the city council to look into that and why that's happening. Why aren't these people being prosecuted further, or they're let off too easily, or the fines are the cost of a building permit or a $50 fine for something. It's just cheaper for them to pay that fine and move on. I'd like to see those fines increased drastically, especially for these repeat offenders. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab.
Matthew Van Wormer, 235 Dennison Avenue, budget approval.
Thank you. Matthew Van Wormer, 235 Dennison Avenue. There's a great difference between a big picture and a complete picture. Ideas are the big picture, and we've heard several of them here tonight. How to achieve those ideas is the complete picture. The distinction is very important, and people that can see one or both are needed, especially when it comes to passing a comprehensive budget for the city of Elyria. I want to thank the administration and the council members for working together to take the big picture and make it a complete picture to put Elyria in the best possible position going forward. I'm sure there were many discussions where compromise was necessary, and the ability to find common ground is vital to the progress of our community. I'm hopeful that continued collaboration will put Elyria on the right path for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Wormer.
Tiffany Reedy, 113 William Street. Subject town hall announcement.
Tiffany Reedy, 113 William Street. I'm just wanting to make a quick announcement that this Saturday, the 25th, at 2 o'clock, located at 630 Nelson Street, it's a small church called Transformation Outreach Ministries, is where we'll be holding a resident town hall. It's an informative town hall where people can ask questions, but also get the information that goes behind the Republic Steel Quarry. Thank you.
That was the 25th
Yeah, this Saturday, the 25th, at 2 o'clock.
at 2 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Reedy.
We have Mary Sawerka, 119 Fresno Court. ARPA money.
Mary Sawerka, 119 Fresno Court. I don't have prepared remarks. I do want to mention just two things. First, I want to thank council for slowing down the development over at Chestnut Commons. I know you're on a second reading tonight. The developer did mention to me that they are looking at the traffic pattern again with another consultant, so that's a good thing. But I wanted to stress tonight that I know your budget is prepared and you're passing it tonight, but if there is any leftover or spare ARPA dollars, I would again make another plea that you take a look at the downtown railroad underpasses. For any type of structure, taking a look at those, seeing what it would cost to do some basic lighting. It's just, they're horrible, they're deplorable. Some of them are impassable. East Bridge Street is terrible. I would encourage Mr. Lundy to have crews out there washing and sweeping down East Bridge as much as possible. I know that Mr. Corzan's team does that kind of work. Washington Avenue is basically held up with some wood. The vines will start growing on East Avenues where it covers up the height of the bridge. So if there's any dollars left over, I would again encourage you to take a look at that and maybe do a brief study on what we can do in order to fix up those bridges in our downtown. Because all the work that the downtown and the CIC is going to work on, it's going to go for nothing if those bridges look like the way they are. People don't want to walk under them. The lights aren't working, the stones fall. The one on Chestnut Street's probably full of rocks right now, and I know all of them very well. So I would encourage you to save whatever slice of money you can to take a look at those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sawerka. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Sawerka, for speaking on that topic again. I know Mr. Lundy knows a lot about railroads and the issues around them. An idea that I had for the East Bridge Street overpass, which while structurally sound, I understand, is not aesthetically pleasing, we can all agree, would be to collaborate with the Elyria Arts Council and paint it. This is an idea. I would like to know if it's possible. Perhaps Mr. Lundy can opine a little further on that. But in addition to what Ms. Sawerka mentioned, it would be good to look into other options for improving the aesthetic appeal, let's say, of some of these overpasses like East Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Mr. Lundy, do you want to weigh in on a comment there?
Sure. Yeah, the railroads are traditionally a difficult dance partner. You know, it takes two to dance, right? And it's always been a challenge. It's a challenge in a lot of communities. I know Communications was out recently looking at some of the lighting with the bridge overpass, along with First Energy, trying to see how we could address that. I know that Mrs. Sawerka, when she was Safety Service Director, I think they did some work dealing with the turnpike and in dealing with the lighting underneath there on Abbey. So we can certainly have that conversation with the railroad, but you know, it is the railroad's property, and while we can try to clean it, I think if we start getting into, you know, any additional artwork or whatever it may be, you know, we would still need their permission. I mean, I can't just show up and paint somebody's building. I wish I could in some cases, but so we will definitely reach out with the railroads and see if we can work that through. 16 years ago, I remember having lots of these discussions with the railroads, and there's some of the most difficult and frustrating conversations you can have, but we'll try to re-engage and have a conversation with them and see what they can do and see if they want to be good citizens and help make the community look better. At least for the underpasses. I think we look pretty good, but at least for the underpasses, we need to brush up.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy.
Council President, if you don't mind.
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, so, when I was in DC, I got a chance to talk to the Department of Transportation about these bridge and underpass issues that we have. And, they shared similar sentiments as Director Lundy just shared about the difficulty of working with the railroad companies. That was prior to this derailment. So I say that to say, and so I mentioned this idea about painting. I said, well, what if a community group, what if the city didn't do it? What if a community group just went under there and painted? He said, well, they'd sue them. And I'm like, they would sue a community group? He said, yeah, they would sue them. So I said, all right, well, what's our leverage? And he's like, there's not a lot of leverage because they own the property. But now with this derailment, I think there is an opportunity for us to raise our voice with them and say, hey, we want you to take care of these underpasses. So we can make an effort to try to help. If we can get letters from the residents that we can send to them and kind of push them to give us the permission to do it or them do it themselves. So I think the timing is right.
Sure, and I would expound upon that in talking with our local representatives, our state representatives, and our U.S. representatives and senators to say, listen, we need to, get on board with this and make an effort here to make an improvement of these underpasses. So, very good. Thank you, Mayor.
That's all the petitions from the lobby.
Okay. Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions first reading.
Sponsored by Finance, a resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to the Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Sayre. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-8. Sponsored by Finance, a resolution approving the collection of demolition-related costs for 144 Irondale Street, Elyria, Ohio, for 4035, and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts, costs to the Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-9. Sponsored by Utility, Safety, and Environment. A resolution to urge the Congress of the United States of America and the General Assembly of the State of Ohio to enact legislation to further protect the residents, business owners, and visitors of the City of Elyria, Ohio from the inherent dangers of train tracks located at or near the City of Elyria.
Utilities. Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons, or Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion? Oh, discussion, Mr. Callahan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Through you, by supporting this resolution, we are asking that first responders be notified before dangerous chemicals and hazardous materials travel through Elyria and surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Is there any further discussion?
Call for the question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-10. That's all resolutions first reading.
Resolution second reading.
There are none.
Resolution third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance to authorize the permanent appropriations of the City of Elyria, Ohio for the year 2023 and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second. Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-34. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for patrol and surveillance cameras and equipment for the Elyria Police Department and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-35. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for an additional baseball field at South Park.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-36. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for a multi-purpose field at South Park.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-37. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the Washington Village Park project and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declare an emergency. Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-38. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance is second reading.
Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an economic development agreement with the Eaton Point LLC or its designee.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its second reading under suspension of rules and declare an emergency.
I don't know if an emergency needs to be at this point. Mr. Callahan, Law Director Derry.
Through you, Mr. President, this was not designated by the committee as an emergency.
Okay.
However, that is up to the council.
Okay. I think we'll just leave it as a suspension under suspension of rules. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. There was some discussion in regards to, prior to, when this was brought before the council, in regards to the concerns that we've had over at Chestnut Commons and the comments and the concerns about the development and what are we going to do moving forward to be proactive to have the Department of Transportation involved actively involved sooner rather than later to kind of come up with alternative plans to address the issues over and through there. Because if this is going to develop like we hope, And if phase two actively comes about quickly, we want to be prepared. And so I would encourage the development, I don't know if they're here or not, to partner up with the ODOT, our Department of Transportation, to kind of get on board and come up with plans that will help ease the traffic pain over and through there at the Chestnut Commons. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh on it. If not, I'll call for the question. Questions have been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify
Mr.
by...
President, may I have a roll call vote?
Well, we'll do the passage and then we'll... On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. Sierra?
Aye.
Mr. Oswald?
Aye.
Mr. Corbin?
Nay.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Tolet?
Aye.
Mr. Lippian?
Aye.
Mrs. Davis?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider?
Aye.
Mr. Stewart?
Aye.
One nay?
One nay.
Is that just the passage?
That was just on the passage.
Through you, Mr. President, we're going to do a roll call on the suspension as well?
We can, so do you
Please.
want to retract, go back and...
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've got a roll call vote on the suspension.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. Sierra?
Aye.
Mr. Oswald?
Aye.
Mr. Corbin?
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Tolet?
Aye.
Mr. Lippian?
Nay.
Davis?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider?
Aye.
Mr. Stewart?
Aye.
One nay. It's, ordinance 2023-39. That's all ordinance's second reading?
Ordinance is third reading.
There are none?
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Monday, 3/27, 6 p.m. Items referred. Joint CD Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 3/27, immediately following the Community Development meeting. Finance requests the Mayor, the Law Director, the Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 3/27, immediately following the joint meeting. All items referred. Utility Safety Environment requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Wednesday, 4/12, 6 p.m. All items referred. And Strategic Plan requests the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, and Law Director on Monday, 4/3, beginning at 7 p.m., immediately following the council meeting. All items referred.
Thank you. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, on Wednesday, April 12th, we will be discussing our streets and deciding what streets are going to get done. Even if you're not on the Utilities Committee, I encourage you to come and make your voices heard, because otherwise I'll take your money. You know it.
I think you better register that. Mr. Sierra.
Two things through you, Mr. President. First of all, in the utility meetings on the 12th, is that going to be the demonstration as well? For the new paving process that might go into effect? And then so much talk about trains tonight. Any update on the quiet zone? I know it hasn't got quiet yet, and I know we have the delineators up and stuff like that. I don't see anybody from engineering to answer that, so.
Yeah, I'd have to inquire more on the quiet zone issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President, I did have a talk with Ms. McKellips, and she's in the process of getting that taken care of. She's waiting for a few other towns to get their paperwork then, so she can kind of piggyback off of what they need to get into, because now we gotta have them come out and inspect, and there's a process that they have to go through, and she is in the process of taking care of that right now. So the exact particulars, I can't tell you, but she is in the process of getting that squared away. And then they will stop blowing the horns as soon as they get the word. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. As an addendum to what Dawn brought up with bottled water, the First Ward Good Neighbors Initiative is going to look into doing a bottled water drive for East Palestine. I would like it to be something that also raises awareness for the need to have bottled water in one's residence in case of an emergency or disaster. There will be more information on how we're going to do the collection. The idea would be, it would be nice to buy one for yourself and buy one for a neighbor community so that we can get them essential drinking water that they need to sustain their life, and also have drinking water available in the residents' homes in Elyria should it be needed. So there'll be more information on this in the coming weeks, but suffice it to say, if any are interested in coming to the First Ward Good Neighbors Initiative every first Thursday at East Rec, 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Is there any other miscellaneous and unfinished business before this council? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, moved by Ms. Mitchell, second by Mr. Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.